Okay, as we start to move into the physical poses of yoga, I want to introduce you to some what I'm going to call home run poses in yoga. They are poses that if you were to go to a public class, you would most likely hear every one of these poses in a class. You know, there are hundreds of yoga poses. I learn new poses all the time, believe it or not. That's how many there are. But these are just some standard ones that you're going to need to know what they mean because you're going to hear them often. So the first one is called child's pose. Child's pose is often a way that we start a yoga class. It's a quiet opening pose. A resting pose, we call it, but it's also something that if you're in a power yoga type of class, if someone is struggling, if someone just needs a break, that's why we call it a resting pose. It's a pose that we tell them they can always come to. So to come to a child's pose, you're going to come with your shoulders on top of your knees. You're going to bring your big toes to touch, and then you're going to spread your knees out to the sides of your space. Now, you can do this a little more closed. I'll show you in a minute. But we're going to push our bum back to our heels and sit on your heels. So the tops of the feet are into the mat. And then you're going to ask them to begin to walk their hands out either to their forearms and try to get them to come down to their forehead. So for some people, the shoulders could be tight, so you can take the shoulders out wide. That releases the shoulders. So you want the chest to come down, and you want everything to be heavy. Now, if it's too much to have the knees spread apart, you can also do like a shortened version. Just bring them in closer. But wherever you are, you're just coming down, you're finding that resting pose, and you're settling into the breath here. So again, this could be at the middle of a class, during a class if they're having trouble, or end of a class, but it's really a resting pose. It's called child's pose. The second pose you've probably all heard of is downward facing dog. Another very powerful pose. Sometimes in a class we will call it a resting pose if they just don't want to go through a chaturanga, which I'll show you too, but it's another place that they can just end up. Not an easy pose, especially if we're engaging and doing it properly. But so we're coming to the hands, we are curling the toes, and we are sending the hips up to the sky. So in most cases, the heels are not going to touch the ground, and that's perfectly fine. I'm going to show you what the true distance is in a minute. But we're pressing down with the hands, rooting down, especially with thumb, index finger. So the engagement is on the inner part of the hands. And then we keep that engagement and we externally rotate the shoulders so that the elbow creases are trying to match the wrist creases. And then the third action is we press back with the hands. So notice I have a nice straight spine. We're basically inverted V. We're working into hamstrings, working into the calf muscles, and then you can do a lot with down dog here. You can go up and down on the feet. You can bend knees. You can take hips side to side. But you really want to make sure that you're in that inverted V. A lot of people try to collapse and they do this. And they just let the shoulders pinch because they're trying to get further. But we want to remember that action of thumb, index finger. Externally rotate, press back. There's your engagement for down dog. Okay? The other thing is a high plank, which you're probably familiar with. It's top of a push-up. So shoulders over wrists, we curl the toes, we extend the legs, and we press in. So again, hands are very important. All fingers are spread out like a starfish. And you want to root down with the hands. So you don't want an inactive hand is just like hanging here. You want to bend into the knuckles like you're gripping, like you're trying to grip open a jar. The fingers should be active. So we're coming into that high plank, pressing in. So you'll watch as I do that action again. I externally rotate, I press in, I lift up even higher, engage the glutes. Now from here, I can press right to down dog. I'm just going to send my hips up. So that is your true stance for downward facing dog. You should be able to rock forward to high plank without moving the hands, without moving the feet. Rock back. This is a good thing to do with them a couple times because we're using the core, we're using the arms. Dropping down. Send them back up. So high plank, downward facing dog. And the last thing is called a chaturanga, which is a high-low plank. And then we push up and get back to down dog. So in a power yoga class, that would be called a vinyasa. So an instructor might say, move through your vinyasa, or you can just go to down dog. You can always skip that part. But I'll show you what chaturanga is. It's that high plank, rooting down with the hands. We begin to hinge forward slightly so that we don't dump into the shoulders, and then keeping the elbows in by the sides, we come down to a low plank. So notice that I'm hovering. Then to get back to down dog, you're just going to flip the feet, press up. This is called up dog. Press back. Here we go, down dog. So in any sequence, you could always skip that. You can always, rather than go chaturanga, high to low plank, you can drop knees, drop chest and chin, come up on the tops of the feet, baby cobra, back to down dog. You can skip that entire thing, and whatever you're doing, just have your players come back to down dog. So those are just what I call home run poses, just because you're going to hear that terminology a lot with child's pose, downward facing dog, high plank, and chaturanga. So I will see you soon.